What's happening, people? I hope you're all well. It's been a while since I've been on this channel. Listen, there's so many things that I've got going on right now. It's pretty crazy. Sometimes my head feels like it's spinning, but I feel like sometimes the best way to deal with a lot of things on your plate is to not think about it and just let the universe flow. So that's what I've been trying to do. But back on this channel, so how to identify a young soul. Now, I just want to quickly highlight before I get into this is that the idea is never to prove that past lives exist. That's not the goal. The goal isn't to prove that past lives exists or reincarnation exists. The goal is to use the possibility to create clarity in your head, to open the possibility for understanding of certain situations. It's going to be very, very hard. It's going to be a hard ask for anyone to provide solid proof of reincarnation, past lives, even if you know for a fact that it's true. Such is the universe. Very clever. But how to identify a young soul? Well, I would say identifying a young soul, if you look at old souls, you can use old souls to identify young souls. Again, such as the universe, you can use the polar opposite to identify the subject. So an old soul often can look tired, can look wry, can look like somebody who has weathered a big storm, someone who's very wise, someone who even when their face is young, you can see the age and wisdom in their eyes. The eyes don't lie, eyes are window to the soul. So you can identify an old soul like that. An old soul can seem very grounded. And I've met souls older than myself, you know, I've met older souls than me, and oftentimes they don't always, and it's not a bad thing, but they don't have the drive, determination, and that ambition to go out there and take over the world because they've already done it in past lives, supposedly. So they don't have that drive, you know. So if we're identifying a young soul, which is taking me 2 minutes to get actually into, but there you go. Young souls often they're like the opposite. Conversely, young souls have that drive, they have that ambition, they have that almost like a blank face because they haven't been filled in by the universe yet. The universe hasn't filled them in yet. And what that means is they often have quite a plain face, you know, they don't have the weathered energy about them. They don't have that sort of weight. It's like old souls often look like they're carrying a load of weight with them, you know, not necessarily that they're carrying anything on them physically, but energetically, old souls often look like they're carrying quite a lot of weight on them. Young souls look like they've got a light load, you know, they're very carefree, they're very don't always have the best moral compass, and that's not necessarily their fault. They just haven't had those relationships with people. They often haven't had those experiences that make them question things. And you know, young souls often, if you even go rewind a step behind young souls, which some would call baby souls often are very much focused on survival. They might be spawned, you know, that the universe might, their avatar might be spawned into a time or a place. Place can often be very similar and different, but they can be born into a situation where survival is very much the prerogative. So, you know, they could be put somewhere where they have to hunt, gather, eat food, and all that's really required to win is survival. That's the baby soul, and then they reincarnate into a young soul, and now they're very much focused on drive, ambition. They're building upon those lives where they were very much just focused on survival. So they got the ambition, the drive, the determination. The moral compass doesn't come into it because their past has been all about winning, and their future is going to be all about winning. So often you'll find, you know, at the top of the game, you know, at the top of industries, at leaders, world leaders, famous people, a lot of these people are young souls. You gotta understand the universe gives you according to the stage that you're at. So a lot of these world leaders, a lot of these famous people, celebrities, they're all young souls, you know, they're all young souls. So at the end of the day, you know, if you're wondering sometimes why your drive, ambition, determination isn't necessarily being resonated with the universe, and you see people who maybe you feel are undeserving of that, sometimes that's because they're young souls. The universe gives you certain things at certain stages. So yeah, you can identify a young soul by, they might have a lot of drive, ambition, they might be willing to snake their best friend who's done everything for them just to elevate to the next level in their chosen industry. And you're there like, you know, question marks, why would you do that? It's because they haven't, you know, at the moment, that is the stage that they're at. But it's not, you know, a lot of what I'm saying here people could perceive as a negative regarding young souls. It's not always negative with young souls. You know, we all come from that source, so that source energy. So if we're looking at the positives of young souls, and there most certainly is, you know, if you're coming from that source energy, I guess the newer you are, the more raw you are, and the more you have an intuitive, you know, that connection tends to weaken over time. So when you are newer, you know, when you're newer, you're fresher, and you have more of a harmony with the resonance of the universe. So young souls, they often, have you ever wondered why you're out here thinking your way through life? Young souls are often carefree, feeling their way through life, and they just seem to get certain things that you don't get, and they're able to progress to the next stage. You know, I'm very much a thinking person. I do believe I have stronger intuition certainly than a lot of men, because obviously being a male, I've got a lot of male friends, and you know, sometimes I feel like my intuition, I'm able to pick things up. But nonetheless, and that aside, sometimes I'm thinking through situations, and then someone who's carefree, doesn't actually care whether they succeed or not, just goes and gets it, because maybe they're a younger soul, and maybe they have more of a raw resonance with the universe, because they're closer to the source energy, because their journey hasn't traveled further away yet. They're still quite close to that source energy. Their connection is still quite strong. It's a bit like, some would argue that the gene pool, you know, the earlier humans, people think that we're smarter now. Actually, many would argue that the humans in the past were smarter in terms of their brain capacity. We just have the collective knowledge of thousands of years to compensate for our decreasing intelligence, but they were actually more creative. They had more brain power. They were probably physically stronger because they were closer to the original. You know, the younger souls are closer to the source energy. So there are certain things they don't need to know the knowledge, because they are the knowledge, and they act as the knowledge because they're closer to the source. Whereas we, you know, or older souls, they're traveling, each reincarnation, you're traveling further and further and further away from the source that you came from, because your journey is to travel, you know, that's your journey. You're traveling further away from the source, and now your connection is getting looser, and you're not able to work. You have to think to compensate for the fact that you can no longer feel that source. So young souls do have an advantage. You can also learn a lot from young souls. Young souls often innovate. I've got to get to work. It's crazy. I wish I could literally just make YouTube videos sometimes, although I don't regret, you know, everything I do. I do actually take value from it, but a part of me wishes sometimes I could make YouTube videos all day. But also, one thing I want to touch upon before I end this video, before I'm late, young souls often, you know, there is like this feeling that the universe can operate on a different difficulty mode for different people. So you know, it makes sense, you know, when you start playing like a console game, you know, if you haven't played it before, you might start on easy, and then, you know, you get to medium, hard, ultra hard, you know, like on a PlayStation game or something. And so some would say that the universe will start you off on maybe an easier level, and therefore your ability to achieve things, your ability to get to the top is easier when you're playing the universe at an easier level. But as you become more advanced and your soul gets older, maybe the universe ups the ante and makes you play the game at a more difficult level. And so maybe when you see a lot of young souls at the top and you feel like they don't deserve it, maybe the universe is operating at an easier level for them. Maybe you've had your time. Maybe you had that time where you were able to, everything you did turned to gold and you could do no wrong and everything you touched was brilliant, even when you were doing loads of immoral things. Maybe the universe is up in the ante according to your capabilities. So maybe that's something to keep in mind when you see someone who you feel doesn't deserve it. Maybe you've had your time, maybe it's their time. But also just remembering we're all on our own journey, and it's important to remember that as well. So let me know what you think about how to identify a young soul. You know, drive, ambition, determination, maybe a little bit immoral sometimes, through a little bit of ignorance, and they seem to just feel their way through situations. They can sometimes succeed without putting much thought into it, whereas some of us have to think a little more, and maybe the universe is operating on a slightly easier level. Let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you get a notification when I make a new video. If you appreciate my work and want to leave a donation, there's a link for that in the description. With that, enjoy the rest of your day. See you on the next one. For mortgage advice tailored towards your individual needs, contact PGB Mortgages today. Let them guide you through your home buying journey. Contact details are in the description.